Hey there, and welcome back to Superman Week here on the channel. If this is the first video you've watched, I've got all weeks grouped together in the Superman playlist on the channel, so if you want to go back and watch any of the others, you can do that there. So today, I want to talk about Kingdom Come. So this is one of my favorite comic books in general. I mean, it's a great Superman story too, but it's just a great comic book. It's written by Mark Waid and painted by Alex Ross here, and it's just a great story. I used to read this like every year. You know, there's so much going on here, just, you know, visually and with the storyline. I think you can read this several times and, you know, kind of see something new every time that you read the book. Having said that, I'm not here to talk about this book today. I want to talk about this here. So this is Comixology, the Kingdom Come Companion. And so this was a book that was produced sort of independently from DC. That was supposed to be the beginning of a series of books where each book would be a different topic. And so this was the inaugural edition taking a look at Kingdom Come. Now, my understanding is that back when this came out, the publishers of this had contacted the Superman editorial and had kind of gotten permission, but then by the time the book had come out, there had sort of been like a regime change in Superman editorial, and so the new people had no clue what this book was and didn't want anything to do with it, and so this book went out of print very quickly. For me, this was a book I knew was coming out, but I was like, oh, I'll pick that up later. And then that happened, and then I could not find this book. So to this day, this is the only copy of this book I've ever seen, and it's the one that I got and is in my personal collection. So, and you know, this came out in 1998, you know, a couple of years after Kingdom Come wrapped up. This is just sort of like a great resource. If you like Kingdom Come, this book kind of tells you everything you need to know about. So there's a lot of behind the scenes sort of things. There's references talking about the different characters in Kingdom Come. So yeah, I know this, you know, still kind of hard to find, but I'm just going to recommend it. If you see a copy of this somewhere, grab it. I just think it's a great resource, and so I wanted to kind of take a look at this here today. And so we've got kind of a breakdown here. So we have an editorial here, kind of like why they're publishing this book, and, you know, the idea being that this is going to be the first in a series. Because of the trouble with this book, there was never another volume of this. There was a magazine called Comixology, which I believe ran for 4 issues. I have those. They're all really good. Again, that was like from Tomorrow, so that kind of leads into like Back Issue and like kind of some of their other magazines and stuff they do. So, you know, and I like all that. I've talked about some of those on here before. Yeah, so here's kind of the original Alex Ross sketch. Yeah, so the interesting thing too about this cover is that this is sort of a takeoff of the old school Super Friends sort of logo with all the characters, and so this is Alex Ross kind of recreating that with the Kingdom Come characters. So again, a very different tone, you know, from this to Super Friends. So yeah, kind of a fun kind of take on these characters, but really does not kind of express the tone of the story of Kingdom Come. I believe this was done for a program at a comic convention around then. I think that's where this art originates from. So we open with the editorial, and then we get this sort of origins of Kingdom Come, and this is just sort of like backstory, talking about Alex Ross having worked on Marvels, and kind of how Mark Waid got involved, the writer, and that kind of thing. Then they're kind of talking about the annotations, so there's a big section of annotations in this book too, because again, Kingdom Come is a very dense story. There's a lot going on, there's a lot of characters, a lot of new designs, new versions of old characters. So a lot going on in this book. So they start going through issue by issue here, and, you know, kind of breaking it down by page, kind of what's going on in the storyline. And we've got these little sidebars sort of explaining different things. Here's book 2. So yeah, it was just super in-depth. You know, you couldn't really ask for more information on this one story. And I mean, I don't think you could even do this with most comic books. You know, it's just that there's so much going on in Kingdom Come that, you know, you can do this kind of treatment with it. And again, kind of telling you about some of the older characters in it and that kind of thing, or like references to other comics and sort of older characters. And yeah, kind of issue by issue here. And now all the page numbers too are based on the collected editions, not the 4 individual issues that originally came out, which nowadays is basically how people are reading the story, so I feel like that works out pretty well. Yeah, and they even have a section here on the epilogue that was made for the collections that wasn't in the original 4 issues when it was released. And sort of like talking about the original pitch and that kind of thing. Now here's a real fun part of the book is the sketchbook. And so we see Alex Ross's designs for a lot of the new characters. This character in particular here, Alloy, who is a combination of the Metal Men from DC Comics. This was a character that Alex Ross created as a kid. So like here's some drawings from when he was younger, when he originally created the character. And then we have Alloy here in the scene in Kansas in the book. So it's kind of neat seeing that kind of evolution of the characters in the story. So yeah, we see a lot of pencil work. Here's a lot of designs for Batman's armor that he has at the end of the story. And then an interesting thing in here too is some friends of Alex Ross also took a crack at some of these designs. Again, there's a lot of characters in here, you know, a lot of, you know, man hours and sort of developing these. And so, you know, you could see here where he had some of his friends kind of take a crack at some of the characters too, which is, you know, interesting, kind of gets a different look for some of the designs. That's kind of my pet peeve too, when like one artist kind of redesigns a whole line of characters, is that like so much of it carries over from each design to the characters that eventually you have a line of superheroes where it looks like everybody shops at the same store or something like that. So I think it's really good to kind of have outside opinions coming in on these things. And because ultimately that's what you have in a line of comic books is, you know, especially DC, it's been going on for like over 80 years. There's countless people that contributed. It just adds some more diversity to the line. And so yeah, so we've got, you know, all these new characters and like kind of little blurbs about the characters, even if it's not that in-depth, you know, it's some thought, because some of these characters only show up for like a panel or two in the story. Some of these designs weren't used, you know, so it's kind of nice seeing them here, or like they were a character in a background and so you didn't really get a good look. So yeah, here we have Nightstar, again, another character Alex Ross created when he was a kid, so we see some different versions of that character that he's drawn through the years. And yeah, we've got this Peacemaker. It's a much more like Boba Fett looking version of Peacemaker here. And Plastic Man, who I think is only in the epilogue, and I don't think we actually see him in like his sort of human form. We've got Red Robin here, who was, you know, introduced in this story, and, you know, talking here kind of about the influence of the Batman movies at the time, how that influenced the costume, and how it's sort of like a combination with that and Dr. Midnight from the Golden Age. So yeah, just a lot of cool, and of course a lot of Superman stuff here, kind of being the main character in the story. And we've got different versions of the S, because, you know, we've got this very simple, straightforward S that, you know, we're seeing now in James Gunn's Superman movie that just came out. So yeah, and then here we have Tula, another design done by another artist. So again, you know, kind of adding some more variety to the costume designs. And here we've got like some sketches of like some promotional art and different things. And here's like the pencil art for the covers that Alex Ross did. And then we've got like a Q&A here with Mark Waid and Alex Ross talking about different things about the book. And so then we have this. So this is the character index. So this is a big part too of the book. And so it just goes through alphabetically. You know, here we have Alloy again saying what page and panel he's on. And so we get a description of all the characters too. And so, you know, here we've got Batman, so we've got a pretty large entry for Batman. But then other characters, you know, that were created for the book, not all of them have an in-depth backstory necessarily. Some of them are just sort of like a interesting visual, you know, sort of thing. Or then we have Darkseid, who, again, is not in the book, but they reference him in the segment with Orion that was added for the collection. So we have a little section here, kind of, you know, says Lord of Apocalypse deceased. So yeah, so Darkseid is dead at this point in the story, but they still mention him in the book, so we have a little entry here. So if, like, someone doesn't know who Darkseid is, you can take a look at that here. You know, hopefully get some more out of the story. Okay, so like down here on this page, we have Dragon Knight, new character, unaligned or rogue metahuman, and that's where he first appears. So there's a lot of that throughout the story for different characters, you know, kind of new characters that were made for the story where, you know, we don't know who they are really. They're not necessarily crucial to the story, but, you know, even those characters have an entry here. So here we have Dragon Knight listed, and so if we take a look here in the book, there's Dragon Knight kind of in the background here of this panel. Now, the other thing with the Comixology book is, I believe the page numbers are listed to the original Graffiti collection that came out. So it looks like, so I'm looking at the absolute version here that DC did after that. And so the pages are off, I want to say by 2 pages. So it's, you know, it's not the same edition that they're referencing here, but, you know, ballpark, you're going to get to where it's at in the book. You can also reference the annotation pages and kind of read a description of what's going on that page to find, you know, the one you're looking for. So it's not exact to like the new collections being made, but it's still pretty close. And again, it's like, what other book is going to have, you know, this much detail on any comic story, really? So yeah, so we have Superman's entry here too, which is pretty big. So yeah, anything you wanted to know about the Kingdom Come characters, you can pretty much find out in this section here. Then we have an interview with Mark Waid, and the art we're shown during this section of the book is from the Kingdom sequel that Mark Waid did without Alex Ross a couple years later. Again, I've got mixed feelings about that. I feel like the Offspring special is really kind of the best part of that. Oh yeah, so here it's the Frank Quietly art here. So that's about Plastic Man's son, who I don't believe is in the original Kingdom Come story, but appears in the Kingdom mini-series event that Mark Waid did afterwards. Then we have an interview with Alex Ross, and he's kind of talking about Earth X, which is his upcoming project at this point. They didn't play it off like this originally, but I think we found out later on that, yeah, Earth X is his version of Kingdom Come for Marvel Comics. And so he's kind of talking about that, and then talking about, okay, so like Peace on Earth, the big Superman treasury that he did too. And then, you know, they're talking here why he didn't work on the Kingdom event that Mark Waid did. And I think they had some differences on the Gog character that was introduced in that, but it is a reference to Magog, one of the main characters in Kingdom Come. And then we have like some X-Men art here that Alex Ross did for Earth X. And then thankfully we have an index here too, because there's a lot going on in this book. It really needs an index. So yeah, that's in here. And I think that's it. So yeah, here you can order more copies of the book if you want. Wish that was still available. And then we've got like a retail directory here at the end. So again, I'm assuming stores that kind of contributed to the book getting made. And then we've got the cover right here at the end, nice black and white version. And that's it. So yeah, that's the Comixology Kingdom Come Companion. It is a mouthful for sure. But again, a book I really like. I just happened to stumble across this one day and picked it up. Have not seen a, you know, this was 20 years ago probably I picked this up. I have not seen a copy since. I think kind of the legal troubles, you know, they might have had once it was released has really prevented it from being reissued or anything like that. I don't know if there's a way to read this digitally or anything like that, but as far as I know, this is it. There was the Comixology magazine that came after, which was more like a standard magazine where it wasn't like one topic per issue or anything like that, but it was a really good magazine too, and I've got those. I might take a look at those someday on the channel too, just because they're really well made and, you know, was a limited run. But yeah, if you like Kingdom Come and you find this book, pick it up. Cannot recommend this enough. It's just such a great resource for Kingdom Come. Odds are there's something in this book you didn't notice when you read the book the first time. Again, I used to read Kingdom Come every year, and like every time I would see something new. That's another reason I really like this Absolute edition, because you can see the art, you know, so much larger than it was originally published. You can just see more detail in it, and there's a lot to see in this one. So yeah, have you ever read this book? Do you like Kingdom Come? Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are on this, and be sure to come back tomorrow for more Superman videos. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to follow me on social media, I'm on Twitter/X @Detective651, also on Instagram @Detective651. Be sure to check out my t-shirt store at tpublic.com/user/Detective651. I've got a lot of nerdy designs on there, and there's sales all the time, so check it out frequently.